Hello, everybody. My name is Matthew Horncastle. This is Blair Chapel, and this is our Creating Wealth Through Property presentation. Now, we've done this to thousands of people, and everyone's absolutely loved it. So we thought we'd record this video just to give you the presentation so you can watch it from the comfort of your own home or share it with your friends and family. Let's just get into it. Boom, go time. So creating wealth through property investment, an amazing and exciting subject. Now, any good presentation needs a good disclaimer. So just really quickly, we're not financial advisors. We're not giving you financial advice, and seek your own advice before you make an investment decision.
So everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. Now to get started, what we want to bring up first is the property clock. Now, what this represents is what you hear every day in the media, the news, your friends, your family, your colleagues, all around what the property market's doing. So a very simple concept where you've got 12, the peak of the market, and you've got 12 to 6 with prices falling and 6 to 12 prices rising. Now, what we normally do in the seminars is sort of ask the audience where we think the property market is. So I just want you to sort of take a bit of your own time and go, right, different key areas of New Zealand, say Dunedin, Queenstown, Christchurch, Wellington, Auckland, where do you see the market sitting? And one of the most interesting things about this is we can do a presentation usually once a month, and most months the answers are incredibly different. Like last month we did one in Christchurch, Auckland and Wellington, and everyone was very consistent, saying we're sort of between a 9 and a 12, and the market's very strong and solid. But I bet with what's going on at the moment, all of a sudden those numbers would be dramatically different, even though all the fundamentals of property haven't changed.
Yeah, because you guys are just getting bombarded by the media. Property's rising, property's dropping, rents are rising, rents are dropping.
But we'll come back to what this actually means in relation to the big data.
Yeah, but just take this and just take a second to think about it. Now, who are the presenters? You guys live in a world where you're bombarded by anyone who can rent a Lamborghini, run an ad on Instagram and tell you they're going to change your life with their secret formula. So we just want to spend a quick couple of slides talking about who we are and what we've done in the current New Zealand property market, just so you can know that the information we're giving you is relevant to you today.
So starting off, going about a decade back, when we first started out properly in business together, we were very hands-on. We didn't own any property at this stage, but we did things like labour-only contracts for other building companies, had a temporary fencing business, and did fun things like maintenance contracts at trailer parks. We get to clear block drains and clean public toilets and showers and all those fun sorts of jobs.
So now, by the age of 20, this is where we really entered into the property world. So at this stage, we were building spec houses. So what our business goal / our plan at that time was, we used to buy an old house, we would renovate it, and then we would keep that as an investment property. And in the back of that old house, in the backyard, we would subdivide it and we would build a new house and we would sell it. So at this time, we were doing about 12 houses a year. And you can see here this photo. This is our first ever property development. We did a block of 4 houses in Woolston.
So going forward to the age of 23, this is when we sort of really narrowed down as to what we wanted to do for more or less the rest of our career and our lives. And we did love doing these new property developments. And although we'd amassed about 12 rental properties of the older homes, we had those great properties where we were getting sort of a 10, 11% yield, but you had tenants like the mongrel mob.
Yeah, it was a great time.
So around this time is when the LVR rules changed, which a lot of you might be familiar about, where banks went from being happy with sort of a 20% deposit, and overnight they said you need 40%. Now we also needed equity and cash to be able to trade and keep doing developments. So over the course of about a year, we sold down all of those 12 properties to get a nice liquid cash state. And then the pitch you see just sort of up here, this block of townhouses, this was when we really found our niche. So this was a block of 10 one-bedroom townhouses in Christchurch Central City, and we sold it out in 3 days. And like we went in 1 year, like Matt said, we were doing about 12 homes a year, sort of 8 to 12, and we were selling them across the whole year, so about 1 sale a month. And in this 1 year, we went from doing 12 sales up to about 114. And that's when we got put on the cover of the Property Investor magazine as sort of having 30 million in turnover at the age of 23. So it was a really massive year of growth and refocusing as we sold the rentals and started to double down on this development.
And just to put a quick perspective in there, we used to buy a block of land, put a for sale sign up to sell the standalone house. We would then build the whole house without selling it, do 3 months worth of open homes to sell that house. Where this development here, we had the worst render you could ever imagine, and we put it out to the market and sold all of these houses off the plan in 72 hours. So that just shows you the massive demand for a house that's affordable to buy, affordable to live in, and affordable to maintain, located where someone can live, work, and play. So as of today, today being 2020, we are the largest builder in Christchurch, second largest builder in Canterbury, and the 13th largest builder in New Zealand. So we've delivered 180 houses in the last 12 months, and we've got 400 houses to deliver in the next 12 months ahead of us. Now, we're also very, very noisy. We have an opinion on everything because we love property so much. So that's why you see us on the news or you hear us on Talkback Radio. And we've also had conversations with some of New Zealand's leading politicians about the New Zealand property industry and how we can make it better. So we are seen as a voice and a leader inside the industry.
Yeah, that's sort of enough about us. What this is more about is providing information and value to our audience and to our watchers, as far as giving you guys the tools that we wish we had when we were starting out in property. So we're going to do a very top-down approach, and starting right from the top is to why invest in general. Like, we do hear various answers in our seminars. Some it's for financial freedom, some it's to get ahead, some say because I feel like I have to, and they're all very valid points.
Yeah. Now, there's some really scary stats around financial literacy. Some of the stats I've seen is 60% of people live paycheck to paycheck. So what we've just got to talk about, we've got to talk about the culture of money. Now, let's just think about this. When you grow up, when you're young, you spend your life relying on your parents for money, right? And then you go out into the workforce, and then, or let's say you get a university education, right? Then you're relying on the state for money. So you go from the parents to the state. You then go from the state to employment. So you get a job, right? Most people live paycheck to paycheck. And then you go from employment onto some form of pension or KiwiSaver or retirement scheme. But the problem with this whole process, at no point do you have financial control and financial freedom. And there's some really scary stats around the cost of running these pensions. We have aging populations. We have people that are living a lot longer. I just read a book recently saying it's perfectly feasible for people to live healthily to 120. Right? So we've got people living a lot longer. We've got a massive cost associated with that. And governments are now starting to realize, oh my God, this is a real problem. We're seeing this currently with National talking about lifting the retirement age. And this is going to become quite apparent in society. So what you need to say to yourself is you need to say, this isn't an option. I actually need to take some financial responsibility and get myself in a position where I'm financially independent.
Because we don't want, like, a lot of people feel like this person in the photo, just where they're never quite there, and they're always wondering sort of how they change that. And investment obviously is a really great way to sort of take those controls off from your employer, from the state, and start to set yourself up for your own success.
Yeah, completely agree.
So why invest in New Zealand? It's very easy to say, oh, I live here. It's easy. I know where to go. I can go see my investments. And I think, like I said, the very top-down approach we want to do. So as far as why invest, then why invest in New Zealand? So Matt's going to run you through some pretty amazing stats.
Now, for a tiny island in the middle of the Pacific, we punch amazingly on the world scale. Now, I'm not going to read these stats to you, but you guys can sort of read as I'm talking. But the things you're saying, we're not corrupt. That means the government or the military is not going to arrive and take your investment away. It's a great place to do business. That means we have good free market capitalism where people can grow their wealth. It's politically free, right? It's prosperous. It's easy to do business. It's peaceful. It's happy. It's livable. Now, all of these things, and this is compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah, how many like ones and twos and top tens do we have?
It's amazing. So what that means, when I see that, I go, right, investment is a long-term game. You're taking money and you're adding time, and that's how you grow your wealth, right? And when I see these stats, I say, wow, New Zealand is a great place to have an investment and to watch it grow into the future.
So why invest in property? is like, we're obviously going to be slightly biased because we are in the property industry and the property market.
Because property is just awesome.
But property has been shown to outperform just about all other investment classes in New Zealand. Yes, there are share markets, there are bonds, there's Bitcoins and like lotto tickets and various other investment assets. But we're going to talk heavily about why we think you should invest in property.
So let's go back to this property clock. All this fear, all these feelings, all these emotions, property's rising, property's falling, and you're just getting pounded from all this information from the media. But what if, when you take a step back and you look at property, it's way more linear in the way it trends than what the media tells you it is?
So what this graph here is, this is from the REINZ, it's the Real Estate Institute of New Zealand. And this shows the average house price in New Zealand from about 1992 up to today. And what's amazing, if I get the mouse here so you can follow along, is we're always taught to go, oh, well, let's try buy it when it's at 6, then I will sell it as the market's rising before it just crashes again. And like, if we look at the GFC here, which up until recently has been the biggest economic event that New Zealand and the world's faced, property went from, say, 350,000 down to about 300, 330. It's about a 7% drop. And our investment strategy is quite different than the whole 12 to 6 cycle. We're more around what can you buy and afford to own more or less long-term or forever. That whole Warren Buffett quote of the best holding periods forever. Because although we do get these little markets and markets, these 6 to 12s, when you step back and look at the data, you're far better focusing at a long-term approach, a long-term perspective. It's not worth trying to buy at the 6, sell at the 10 or the 12 or the 2 before it comes down. Take that long-term approach and use the data.
So why is property so special, right? There's 2 things I love about property, right? So the first thing is leverage. Now, you take $100,000 of your cash and you walk down to the bank and you say to your Westpac Bank manager, hello, Mr. Westpac Bank manager, I love Westpac. I think it's an amazing business. Can I please buy $500,000 worth of Westpac shares, and I want to put $100,000 down? Now, he's going to laugh at you. It's not seen as a safe or responsible thing to do, right? But if you go and see that same bank manager and you say to him, hey, I want to buy a $500,000 property. Can I put $100,000 down? Can I put $50,000 down? He's going to say, absolutely. And I'm going to pay your legals and give you a free TV. So they back property as an asset class because they know it's real and it's safe and it's stable. Now, also what happens is you can also insure that asset. So let's say you took that same investment in shares and you call your insurance broker and you say, hey, can I insure my $500,000 worth of shares? He's going to laugh at you, right? But if you take that, you call that same broker and you say, hey, can I please insure my $500,000 house? He's going to say, yeah, no problem. For $2,000 a year, we can do it, maybe less. So you can leverage your capital and then you can insure it. And then over time, you watch that grow. Like in the last 12 months in New Zealand, we've had 14% price increase, right? So 14% inflation. And for someone like me, my portfolio, I've got about 30% in my portfolio. So that means it's 70% leveraged. The growth I'm getting on money that's not mine is absolutely massive. So the property inflation I've had has been more than my salary. And what's really interesting is today, you can borrow money at, what's the going rate? It's 2.93%.
Yeah, under 4.
Right? Let's say 3.5%, be conservative, right? You're getting 5-6% from your rent, and then you're getting inflation on top, which is just absolutely massive. And property is just like the snowball. It starts small and it's sort of hard to get going and it's a bit boring. But then you step back 5-10 years later and you're like, oh my God, this massive asset is accrued.
So very common question we get asked is, will property go up in value? And we're big believers in, one, we don't know. It's not some sort of crystal ball we can shake and get the answer. But we sort of go, what has caused the last property price increases? And then are those factors still at play in the wider economy? So the graph you're seeing here tracks world population and average house price in New Zealand. So in 1975, the average house price was only $24,000. I'd love to go back and buy 10, right?
Yeah, 20.
20, all of them. And fast forward to today, 630. So what that represents is a 26 times increase in price over that 45-year period. Now we have to make some assumptions, and the assumption we make is that we need people to go with these houses. If we have a declining population, there's obviously less demand on these homes. So if we look at what the world was doing during that period, we went from just under 3 billion people,
4 billion.
Just under 4 billion people, up to about roughly 7 billion. And then we have to go on what's going to happen over the next, say, 40, 45 years. And all the economic data says it's going to do more or less exactly the same as what it's just done.
Yeah.
So you think about the amount of people that are about to be born in the next 45 years, where we're going to double the world's population nearly.
And also what's interesting, if we look at today, there's say 7.7 billion people on the planet. There's a couple of billion people in poverty. And as a society, we've said, hey, we don't want people living in slums. We don't want people living in the streets. We want to lift people up to be middle class and to have a great life, right? So think of that housing requirement alone, just taking the current population and bringing everyone up to a standard where we feel happy and comfortable as a society. Like the demand on housing is just massive. So if we had that same property increase over the next 45 years, the average house price would be 16 million. Now, are we saying that's going to happen? Absolutely not. But we can show you suburbs in Sydney today. This is Piper Point, and the Point Piper, got a dyslexia shining through there. And the average house price is 14.8 million. Now, I've been there. The houses are nice, but they're not $14.8 million nice. So, and this is today. So this kind of massive housing inflation does happen because it's just, we live in such a great place and people want to come here and we can never keep up with that demand.
And if you just go back a little bit.
Oh, sorry, just interfering.
So if we look at this, right, and we go, the average house price in New Zealand today is 630,000. Even if you get half of that number, and the average house price is 8 million, or a quarter, and it's 4 million. Like, you've literally got something that you paid 600,000 for. More or less, the tenant will pay for that over the life of the property's mortgage, say 30 years. And then what will that asset be worth at that time?
And I actually think with current interest rates, the tenant probably pays for it in 20 these days.
Is it half? Is it a quarter? Is it a fifth? Even if it's a fraction of that last performance over that 45 years, that's a big number staring back at you on the screen.
100%. Well said.
And the reality is, even though Matt gave the slide away before,
sorry,
is the average person does live a life vastly different from the privileges we have in the likes of New Zealand, Australia, Canada, America. So as this world population does balloon and does go through that stage of just about doubling over the next 40, 50 years, we have to assume we're going to have a disproportionate population growth into Western society.
And New Zealand, because it's just such a great place.
But you saw those statistics. Like, if these people can come here, they most definitely will.
Yeah. And so you wouldn't be surprised. We have one of the highest requests for immigration per capita in the world. So if we removed all of our border controls tomorrow and we let in everyone who had sent an application, our population overnight would more than double to 11 million people. Now, are we going to do that? Absolutely not. But if we carry on with our current immigration policy, which, if anything, I think is going to get more aggressive, our population is going to get to 11 million in 2060 anyway. And what's really interesting, you look at this graph here, so see this is New Zealand's population growth and this is the forecast. And now you jump back to the world population. Look how much more aggressive New Zealand is growing. And that's what we're saying. It's such a great place. People want to be here. Yeah. And so we're always going to receive disproportionate population.
Now, before you go to the next slide, what's the answer, guys? Like I always say this in the seminar, what is the answer? We've got all this demand on property. The world's ballooning in population. How do we solve this problem? We have to assume there's still going to be population growth in New Zealand. It's still going to be hard to build homes. How do we control it? And hopefully a lot of you are thinking, well, we should probably build more homes.
No,
great answer.
Let's build more houses.
So what this here is, and I don't want to make this political whatsoever, this is a great example of the supply in the New Zealand market. So forget KiwiBuild, let's just call it private enterprise. And what KiwiBuild represents is a company that was formed with the objective of delivering affordable housing. They got $2 to $3 billion of working capital. That's billion. Put in a bank account saying, here is your capital, do your job. They could employ more or less anyone they wanted in the private sector, pay them whatever salary they wanted to get them into this organisation. They already owned a lot of the land. And one of the best things is they could override a lot of the local council rules if they started to get a bit niggly and a bit challenging, and they did not need to make a profit. It's like any developer's dream.
Just had to do the job, build the houses.
They just had to build the houses with their $2 to $3 billion and deliver them at the market valuation price. And after, say, 2.5 years, they've built 202 with 400 under construction. Now, I wouldn't say it shows a failure from the government, because when you've got that much resource and produce that little of a result, there's definitely other factors at play. Yeah. Like if you guys are watching this and you've built a house before or dealt with council for renovation, or might be a few developers watching it, it is not a job where you go out and do it and go, gosh, that was easy. God, I made some money. Let's go on and do that all over again. Yeah. As you know, it's just complexity on compliance, on bureaucracy.
And it takes a long time.
It's a cluster to try and get a consent and build something in this country.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where over the last 43, 45 years, was there less or more regulation?
Yeah.
How much easier was it to build homes back then off the 3-page building consent?
When have you ever heard building consents got easier? There's less bureaucracy this year. Minimum wage went down. Importing's now cheaper. Like, you're not hearing these things because things are always going up in price. The numbers we're seeing is the inflation in the property industry is double to triple to 3 times.
That's triple.
Sorry, double to 3 times inflation. So if inflation's at 2%, we're seeing inflation in the building market of 6.
And that's like your timber, your steel, your concrete, your wage rates. It's those sorts of things.
Is this me?
That's you.
So what do we invest in? Now, we take a lot of pride in being investors first. We love what Williams Corporation does, and we try and be one of their largest customers, and we build our portfolio with Williams Corporation. So we're buying alongside the customer. So when we enter into a project, we're entering into it as an investor. We're thinking, right, if Matthew and Blair are going to own one of these townhouses, where do we want our investment to be? And these are the sort of economic factors we look at.
So starting with where we invest, if you look this up on Google or stuff, you'll find this full article. This is one of a really well-renowned economist in New Zealand did a study, and the study was to sort of quantify where he thought the largest house price growth would be in New Zealand. And there was 4 main economic factors, and hopefully I can remember them all. But it was GDP per area, unemployment rate per area, it was forecast population growth in each area, and then it was the amount of homes that area is building, more or less per capita. And each had a different score, and I think if you look at the full article, it shows where the weightings were and what the important things were. And it's of no surprise the cities just dominate. You've got Auckland first, Canterbury second, Wellington third, with Waikato, then we start to get in the regions as we go down.
Yeah, but like, no matter what economic paper you read, people disproportionately attract to cities. Cities are where you can live, work, and play. Cities are where you can build your career. Cities are where you find your boyfriend or your girlfriend. Cities are where the action is, and people attract to that. I was just reading an article the other day, and it said over the next, I can't remember the time period, but let's just say 20 or 30 years, 66% of people or 67% of people will live in cities. So people are always attracting to cities. People want to be where the action is. So I've never heard anyone talk about this, but let's just talk about who is buying property and if there's going to be a change in how people view property.
Because you're buying it for the long term.
Yeah.
It's the 30, 40, 50 years. It's not the 3-year buy and flip.
Exactly.
Or under our model anyway.
So essentially, you've got 2. Let's just break society into 2 groups for the sake of my example. we have baby boomers. So at the moment, baby boomers have the majority of the cash, the majority of the spending power in the economy. And then you have millennials. Now, what I've read is over the next 15 years, the millennial will take over as the most powerful spending and driving force of the economy. So now what we need to say is there a difference between a baby boomer and a millennial? And this is my personal observation, but I look at a baby boomer like my father, my parents, right? My father's a beautiful man, proud man, successful man, hard worker, and his home was very important to him. He always had a beautiful house that was a big percentage of his wealth tied up in his house. He always kept it immaculately. He had the beautiful lawn where it goes mowed this way, then that way, then this way, then that way, white picket fence. He had a beautiful home. And he would have his friends over, right, all the time. And his friends would come over and they'd see his home and us kids would greet them and all that stuff, right? But his home was a massive symbol of his success. All right. Now you look at a millennial. Now I'm a millennial and I couldn't think of anything worse than mowing a lawn, having someone over to my house. Like if I want to go out, I go out to a restaurant. I don't have any lawns, right? And where I get my success from is here, right? I get my success from my validation from my peers, right? I do it building my business, putting it on social media, going on a holiday, putting it on social media, giving to a charity, putting it on social media, right? So I don't need all of this money tied up in an asset to validate myself. So I can have significantly less of my capital in an asset and spend my money on my business, on charities, on going on holidays, on going out for restaurants. So that house is a lot less of a status symbol than it used to be. And we're seeing trends where people are perfectly happy living in smaller houses and spending their money on things they love. And what's funny is we've done this presentation to thousands of people. And last time we did it, I had this beautiful 60-year-old couple walk up to me and they said, "Oh my God, Matthew, I think I'm a millennial too." So culture is changing. People don't want their money tied up in their house anymore. They want to live their life and do the things they love.
And also a lot of that ties back to the amount of people per household. If you look at the studies, every decade, for example, there's less and less people per house.
Yeah, real interesting. We're down to like 2.6 people per house now, and it's just trending aggressively down.
I think now in Christchurch, the most common makeup of a house is just one couple.
Yeah.
So you have to go, what sort of homes do we want to be having in society? Is it the typical 180 square metre house, 3 or 4 bed, 2 bath, double garage? Or is there this need emerging for a smaller, well-built home where these sort of millennials per se can live and have more disposable income for travel, for their lunches, for their dinners, for going to the bar, for going to arts and shows and theatre?
Yeah, completely.
It's a very different way of living. So a bit of a personal story which actually relates back to that is this sort of house up on the top, the one with the garage. This was Matthew and I's first investment property. And like I said, we wish we had this presentation when we started. So when we first bought our investment property, we went to the bank and said, "Hey, Mr. Bank Manager, I've got 30,000 saved up. Matthew's got 30,000 saved up. What can we buy?" And back then lending was a bit more liquid. And he said, "Well, if you buy a house for about $600,000, you'll be fine." So of course we did the only responsible thing. We spent about $615,000. And then we bought a spa pool, some solar panels, some blinds, some furniture.
You'd have no idea how expensive curtains are, right? I think we had to spend like 20 grand just on curtains.
And we moved into this house and sat and we were like, great, we're now a property investor, a property owner. And our theory at the time was we want to borrow as much money as possible to buy the most expensive house we can, because when these capital gains happen, we're going to have a bigger value asset going up in value. For example, it's a $600,000 asset, not a $400,000
Makes
asset.
so much sense.
So there's 50% more stuff going up in value. Made sense at the time, right? What happened was we were bought into a new subdivision. It was about an hour out of town in Christchurch, which in Auckland, that's like being 2 hours out of town.
10 hours.
And we sort of realised that it was really expensive as far as commuting. You sort of commute an hour a day each way. You've got fuel costs. You've got taxis if you have a few drinks after work or have to go into town for a function. Your friends don't really visit you as much because you're too far out. They don't want to go there before going to town. And we sort of, after about, only sort of 3 or 4 months living there, we thought we need to get out of this house and we need to actually go back somewhere where we're more comfortable. And the issue is, back then, I think interest rates were sort of around that 7.5%, 8%. And there was this huge gap between the rent we could rent the house for and what our mortgage payments were. And we weren't in a financial position at the time to be able to cover the shortfall on the mortgage plus rent somewhere else at market rents. So we actually had to sell the house, and we lost about $80,000 by the time we had the interest and the sales fees and all that sort of stuff.
We couldn't afford to lose $80,000.
And we didn't have $80,000 back then. That was more than our actual deposit we put into the house. And what's quite ironic is if we went back to that house today, it has gone up in value. It has followed that curve of that long-term property inflation. The biggest issue we had is we borrowed too much money, bought a house where the rent didn't come close to covering the mortgage, and it was a house we couldn't afford to own and keep long-term. So if you look at the photo on the left, this black and white townhouse, this is more now what Williams Corporation builds, what we invest in, what we focus on. And these are generally well-located 1 and 2 bedroom townhouses. We do some 3 bedroom ones, but the best thing about this house in the photo, it's right in the heart of Christchurch City, 1 bedroom. Quite often they're rented by a couple, so you've got 2 streams of income, and it's generally young professionals. We've got 2 people earning $60,000 to $70,000 a year, whereas the house on the top, quite often you might get a family of 4, stay-at-home mum or dad, 1 person earning, and if that 1 person loses their job, you have to think, what is their ability to service that rent? Whereas if you have a smaller property with a smaller rental payment and 2 income streams, you have to go, if the market does take a wobble, like sort of COVID-19 unemployment rates go up, where is the risk?
Yeah, agreed. So why does what Williams Corporation builds in Wellington and why? Now, Wellington is a very unique market. I always say that Wellington is like a mini Hong Kong. You've got water on one side, you've got hills on the other, you have very limited developable land, very expensive land, and a very mature market. So what we're going to see in Wellington's going to always have disproportionate capital gains because there's just so few places you can build. So we went into Wellington and we just couldn't get our head around the prices. The price we'd have to sell units for was just eye-watering. And we always want to find a niche. We want to find something that makes us special. So what we went from Wellington, there's a flood zone through most of Petone. So we went a bit further back to Lower Hutt. And now in Lower Hutt, there's a lot of infrastructure going on. There's a really good public transport, a train that goes into Wellington. And then what we did was we bought houses walking distance to Lower Hutt CBD, walking distance to the train station. We were doing blocks of 6 to 9, and we were doing 1 and 2 bedroom townhouses. And each development we did was selling out in a day. So we really found a great wee niche to look after the Wellington market.
So what we built in Christchurch, and why now Christchurch, for those of you that aren't from here, obviously we had a big earthquake about 10 years ago now. And what that represents is a $35 billion investment into the city. And a lot of that's insurance money. It's not a loan. It doesn't need to be paid back. It's just $35 billion given to the city in different forms to rebuild and redevelop. And if you look at the photo on the top left, this is sort of our 4 avenues. It's a very small sort of 2 square kilometre area. And the park, Hagley Park, takes up a good sort of third to a half of it. And what this leaves us with is a very small landmass where we have things like a hospital, a convention centre, Metro Sports Centre, all the bars, all the restaurants, all the corporate offices, the Deloittes, the PwCs. So we try to get as close as possible to this. We look at it like a dartboard, and we do 2 main products. So inside these 4 avenues, we do 1 and 2 and 3 bedroom townhouses with no car parks. And then we go just outside the 4 A's, very city fringe, sort of within 2 or 3 kilometres. And we do your more traditional sort of 2 and 3 bedroom with car parking.
Sounds amazing. I'll take 10. So what we do in Auckland and why? Now, to all those people that love Auckland, this is our take on Auckland. The CBD is very, very expensive, and we didn't want to go into apartment construction, so that ruled out the CBD. We went north and we saw a lot of potential, but by the time we got to a price where the sale price and the rents were correlated, we were too far away and we weren't happy with the travel time and the commute. We then went east, and by the time we found affordable land that we could build on and create an affordable house, we were swimming out here. We went south, and there's a lot of potential in south, and we'll be building in south sometime soon. But there were lots of other developers, and we couldn't find a real special niche, something that we were doing well, something we were doing unique. So then what we did was we went west. And we found right from this peninsula here, which is Te Atatū Peninsula, all the way down to New Lynn, there's this U, right? And if you go to some of these bays, this is some of the most expensive real estate in all of Auckland, right around here. And so we went here, and the average house price in these areas is around 900,000 to $1 million. And we could buy a house, demolish it. We could build a block of, say, 7, 8 townhouses, and we do like a 2-bedroom townhouse with a car park for 640,000. And the market absolutely loved it. So we also have 1-bedroom options and 2-bedroom options and 3-bedroom options, some without car parks to get the prices down. But the market absolutely loved it, and we've been selling them down extremely quickly. And there's actually a great article that came out in the paper the other day about how Te Atatū Peninsula is really undervalued. It just reinforced what our customers were buying from.
It's just that whole affordable to buy, affordable to live in, affordable to maintain, but also like close to your transport routes, your shops, the city. So you're about 12 k's from Auckland CBD. Off peak, you're literally about a 15-minute drive to the heart of Auckland. And then on peak, you're probably anywhere from 1 hour to 6 hours, depending on
I think it's about 45 minutes.
But it's about 40, 45 minutes.
That's quite wishy.
So as far as motivation, I just want to really reinforce the property as a long-term journey. It is what can you buy and afford to hold forever, and then accrue multiple properties along the way, as far as our take and what we're doing and where we see the best long-term growth. And since it's one of those things where when the properties go up in value, you don't necessarily see that money. It doesn't just go into your bank account as capital gains, $800 every single couple of days. So you need to figure out why you're actually doing it, because it is slow, it is boring, and it is repetitive. So if you don't have that why and that motivation, that's when Matthew and I handicapped ourselves more than anything. We go, oh, let's just flick it on, let's sell that one and buy that one because it might be a better deal over here. And you just get so crossed up that it starts to consume you. You're not seeing the returns, and you just give up and just go spend your money on a holiday and a new car. And that motivation is different for everyone. It could be being the person that just knows they're set up for retirement. It could be people that want to give more to charity, doing things for their children, looking after their parents to pay back what their parents probably did for them, or just doing cool things like overseas family holidays. So that's different for everyone, but it is important to know why you're doing it and have that plan, because it is slow, repetitive, and boring.
Now, one of the greatest things that happened in my life is Blair and I went over to America and watched some speeches from some of the world's top CEOs. And one of the things they said that really resonated me is you should be successful. You should follow your dreams. You should make money. You should have it all. And as a Kiwi from little old New Zealand, I've never heard anyone speak like that, right? We have a tall poppy syndrome. We're very humble people. We're very quiet, right? And we don't talk about money. And I've never had someone look at me and say, you should go make money, right?
You get that uncomfortable.
Yeah, that uncomfortable gut feeling like, oh my God, really? And it literally changed my life. And if nobody has ever looked you in the eye and said, you should follow your dreams, you should be successful, you should have money, let us be the people that say that to you today. And if you get a chance, you should go see some of these CEOs speak in America. It's just amazing.
Yeah. So a bit of an example, an actual tangible example of one of our properties. Now we do have obviously Christchurch, Auckland, Wellington, and multiple projects in each, but we just picked one. So this one has 24 Kelwyn Road in Kelston in Auckland, and the prices started from $499 for a 1-bedroom on a fee simple title, so it doesn't have a body corporate, and we've also got 2-bedroom options in this development.
And this one actually has a car park. We should have written that down.
Yeah.
So the location, like we said, it's in this loop where we buy from Te Atatū Peninsula all the way down to New Lynn. So you're located about 12k from the CBD, and there's the train station within walking distance. There's actually a really good shopping complex about here somewhere. So you've got shops close by, you've got a train link close by, but you've also just quite a short commute to the city, like I said, about 12k's.
As far as typology, we do like to keep projects slightly smaller. One of those things we do like being able to deliver projects in more or less a year from when we sell it to a customer. And also we don't want you to be unit 27 out of 432. We just like these smaller, more boutique projects. So what you're seeing here is we've got 3 1-bedrooms along the front, and then we've got 4 2-bedrooms across the back, each with a car park. And we also do lots of landscaping, get your own private courtyard. We do electric car charges for the car parks, and it does just have that really nice feeling where you aren't in a big block, you're not by yourself, but you do get that sort of community spirit within your own project.
Yeah. So the design, I really like this design because I just see it as so bulletproof. We have a cream brick with a black iron, and these black steel pergolas. It looks really sharp. We've built this before at 409 Armagh Street in Christchurch, and it just looks like a property it's going to have no maintenance, and it's going to look great for the lifetime of that investment. Now, also, I'm going to talk about this further soon, but you look at this property, this isn't going to leak. This isn't going to fail. It's got a good feet around it. It's got brick and iron. There's no weird horizontal flashings or anything. It's a very safe investment.
As far as our internal fit outs, so we always, like Matt said, we're sort of investors first, then builders second, then developers third. And we sort of go through each room and go, how do we think this should be presented if I had to live here or if I owned it? So as far as the kitchen, we do the full appliance package, which includes your fridge, your microwave, your washer dryer combo, your stone bench tops, tile and floors. Go to the bathroom, we do frameless tile and glass showers. We do Japanese bidet toilet seats, mirror cabinets for storage, vanities with storage, sort of anything that we think could add value. Like
a floorway scully so the tenants or your sister
and even
can't flood the home.
I moved into a property when I was building my new house for 6 months, and it had a mirror cabinet. And I thought, oh my God, why have we not been doing this? It's the most simple thing to put in a house, and you now have no clutter on your vanity. Just all those small things we've learned, we put back into our properties. So as far as the bedroom, they're always set up for a queen bed with bedsides or 2 singles. There's nothing worse than when you walk in with a double bed and you just know that it's just a bastardized bedroom and it should have really been an office.
It's like pushed up against the side of the wall.
We also do things like light switches next to the bed. There's nothing worse than getting in bed and realizing you've left the lights on. USB charging ports, fully built-in wardrobes, just all the things that you can expect from a new home.
Yeah, just to live comfortably. So I'm going to give you the world's quickest engineering lesson on how we build houses. Now, in Christchurch, we had the earthquakes and 30,000 people lost their homes, right? And so we know about what fails and what doesn't when things go wrong. And we were quite close to the engineering testing after the earthquake. So a whole lot of the top engineers in New Zealand got together and ran tests of what foundations failed and why. And essentially what they did was they got all these different foundation types and they put explosives in the ground and they had these explosives go off to simulate earthquakes, and they tested how each foundation performed. And what they found was there was one superior system. And the way the system works is we go into a site. Now we do this on every single house we build. We go into the site and we take, the depth varies, but for the sake of my example, we take 1 metre down of fill and 1 metre past the house, and we take all of that fill away, right? Now what we do is we put a cloth down to separate the existing earth from what we're about to do. And then we put compacted gravel in 300 mil layers with reinforcing in the gravel. And what we're doing under your house is we're building a big solid block of gravel. And what that means is if there's a seismic event, if there's any movement, if there's anything, that's mitigating what the ground's doing. So instead of the ground going like this and like this and like this, it's moving in a more consistent manner because of that gravel raft. Then on top of that, we pour a block of concrete, and it literally sits on top. And the services go through the block of concrete and out the side. And what that means is if there's a seismic event or if there's anything where the house needs to move, the house can literally move on top of the gravel raft. So what we found is when houses weren't able to move, that's when the catastrophic issues happened. But if you just give it a bit of movement, the house can perform and go through these events.
A little bit of movement.
So now from there, how we build the house, we use LVL framing. So LVL is laminated veneered lumber. So it's essentially plywood on steroids is how you build your house, right? And what we found was when we use traditional timber has grown too quickly. And when you move into that house, people breathe, people cook, they turn the heat pump on, they turn the heat pump off. And the timber's too green. When I say green, I mean new. And it moves. And for us as the builder, it's a maintenance nightmare. When you have to go into a house where someone's living and do paint touch-ups and stopping and things, it's a real pain. So we spend significantly more upgrading the timber, but we get massively less maintenance. It's also a lot straighter product because it's engineered. So we get a lot straighter walls and a better quality finish. Now we use the same system for our floor. So we use LVL floors. So again, it's stronger and straighter, and you get a lot less movement between the floors. Now, on top of the floor, as the flooring, the traditional accepted practice is essentially a particle board. Now, the one problem with and you'll know what a particle board is, it kind of looks like Weet-Bix. Now, the problem with the particle board is if you get water on it, you get swelling, and then you get squeaks, and just nothing makes my eye twitch more than a squeaky floor. So what we did to mitigate that, we went to a product called magnesium oxide. So it's called Maglock flooring. And what that does is it's the same mineral they use to build the Great Wall of China. So you've got significantly reduced to no squeaking. You have better acoustics, better fireproofing, but also it feels like concrete. So you're getting a lot less of that sort of bouncy, drummy, timber floory sound. Going down, we wrap all of our houses in plywood. So we wrap the houses in eco-ply. So everywhere we can, we brace with plywood. Now, you wouldn't believe it, the most accepted bracing in the industry is your plasterboard. So that stuff that looks like chalk that you break up with your hand is normally what's bracing your house. Now, we just can't get our head around that. So that's why we wrap all of the outsides with plywood. Between you and your neighbour, now this is even more unbelievable, when people build townhouses, the standard accepted method is literally 2 layers of plasterboard. So you can hang a TV that's between, so you'd have framing, and then 2 layers of plasterboard for each person on each side. So you could essentially hang a TV on the wall and destroy your fire rating. It's now not fire rated. Or you could break into your neighbour's house with a screwdriver. And we just couldn't get our heads around that. So what we do is we individually build each house. We individually brace each house. We then leave a cavity, and then we put in 75 mil of aerated concrete, right? And it's Hebel, which is one of the Rolls-Royce aerated concrete products. So it's significantly lighter than using block. So in a seismic event, you don't have any issues. It surpasses all council and fire regulations by a long shot. And it's just a great product knowing that you've got aerated concrete between you and your neighbour. Now the sophites, we always put sophites where we can around all of our houses. And what the sophite does is it just stops the water from running down the side of your home. And when you don't have the water running down the side of your home stays drier. You've got a significantly less chance of any leaks. And it's just a healthier home to live in. We also use safe building envelopes. So a safe building envelope is no internal gutters, no flat roofs. We just go through the whole process and try and remove anything where the house can leak, right? So we're just picking things like balconies and we're doing them really strategically so the house can't leak. We're not having weird parapets sticking out the side of the house. We're just mitigating all of those things where you could have a weather tightness issue. And then on top of that, we have a residence association. So when we do a block of, say, 10 townhouses, we put them on a fee simple title, right? So you own the land. So when you build a townhouse, you have 2 options. So option 1 is do nothing, right? It's really cheap, but the problem is what if your neighbour decides to paint their house pink, right? Option 2 is a body corp. Now, Body Corp has some really great protection, but it's also big, chunky government legislation designed for apartments, so it's very expensive. And so we looked at doing nothing, and we didn't like it, and we looked at the Body Corp system, putting the house on a unit title, and we just couldn't get our head around the price and all of the issues that come with it. So what we did was we found a great middle ground, which is a residence association. So a residence association is very, very similar to subdivision covenants and a swanky subdivision. So it's a covenant on your title, and then we take lots of the same rules from a body corp. So we take things like you need to be insured. If the majority of people agree work needs to be complete, you need to complete it. You have a communal bank account in place. You can't paint your house pink. You can't have bottles lined up on your windowsill. You can't have any offensive flags hanging in your house. So we just go through all of those things that could possibly go wrong and list that on the title to give the owners protection and to keep the development looking great into the future so you can really benefit from that capital gain.
Good engineering lesson, Matt.
It's good, eh?
Right. Now, as far as the slide here, remember, we're not financial advisors and this is not financial advice, but what I wanted to show you is sort of talking about there's now that gap's closed between rents and mortgages, especially on sort of our kinds of property. So this excerpt here from the top is actually back from August last year. And it was when Kiwibank cut its 1-year home loan rate to 3.55. I think now there's actually rates down to like 3.1 or 2.9.
I saw a 2.9.
Yeah, I think we're now under 3, but as far as just taking a conservative approach, 3.55% interest. Now, will these rates stay around forever? We do not know. You probably would assume they wouldn't, but in the current climate, this is what the numbers look like.
Most economists are saying interest is going to stay low for a long time.
Yeah. So if you look at a $500,000 property, the bank will usually want you to put 20% in. Now, you might have equity you can borrow against your own home. You might have KiwiSaver. You might be a first home buyer and need a 10% deposit. All of these numbers change for everything. That was more of just a high level overview. But if you do sort of what the bank wants, put in your 20% deposit, you're looking at a $400,000 mortgage. What that looks like to borrow that $400,000 is $272 a week of interest costs, so no capital repayments. Obviously, you've got things with the property, like you've got rates, you've got insurance, you might have 2 or 3 weeks vacancy, you've got a property management fee. And don't know, if you own 1 or 2 properties, you might want to manage them yourself. But as far as that long-term approach of amassing a portfolio, you do want to take into account vacancy. You do want to take into account property management. There's all these true costs on top of just the purchase price in your mortgage. So what that looks like is $120 a week for those things. And if you take the average of 2 rent appraisals for that house, it's about $480. So it is still a very affordable property to rent for the end tenant, especially when you go, there's 2 people living there, $240 each. But what's really interesting is that leftover amount, that $88 left over. And that's actually showing you that there's now that gap. Back when we owned that property out in Rolleston, we were more like negative, God, I can't maths it in my head, but it was several $100 every week. Whereas now all of a sudden it's gone the other way because interest rates are so low. But what's the most important thing about this whole slide is that little bit down the bottom that says plus capital gains, because the $88 a week, that's not going to make you rich. You're going to get bored and go, let's just sell it. I'll take the 100K profit. I can buy a new boat, a family holiday, and upgrade my car. Yeah. So it's more, you've got to focus on that capital gains, which Matt will walk you through.
So in the last 12 months, the average house price in New Zealand has gone up, depending on what report you read. It's anywhere from 12 to 14%. So the average house in New Zealand has increased in value by $50,000 to $60,000. It's massive. Now, what does that translate to? Well, if we have $50,000 of property price increases, that's $137 every single day. So imagine each rental property you own, you're essentially in the capital gains, you're getting $137,000 every $137 every day. Now, but that's not linear, right? It might go up a bit and then stay flat and then go down a tiny bit, then up. But long term, you're getting that gain. And as long as you stay in it for the long term, you're going to benefit from that inflation.
And what's interesting, so I did the numbers on my calculator, that's an additional $959 every week. But you don't see it. And that's why people get bored and go, oh, I bought this investment property, it's only making me $20, $30, $50 a week. And they sell it and lose track of sight, or they go, oh, I'll sell it, make the short-term profit. But it's more, if you could actually see in your bank account $957 going in each week, plus the $88, go, what if
it's just massive.
What if I had 3? What if I had 5?
And even if inflation slows down a bit and you get half that or a quarter of that, which I don't think is going to happen, I think it's going to keep going mental. But these gains are still so massive compared to all the other asset classes, and it's real and it's touched. You can feel it, you know it's there, and you're getting paid every week from your tenants.
And I suppose everyone's situation is different, but the best thing I could recommend is have a plan, sit down with a financial advisor, and look at your personal circumstances. Because if you read at these numbers, paying off the mortgage over 25 years, you might not have anything left over each week, but in 25 years, you wake up with a freehold property that you didn't pay for.
That's doubled or tripled or quadrupled in value.
And even if it's only gone up a little bit, you haven't been paying the mortgage. So, but everyone's situation is different. Now, what is a turnkey? All of our homes are what's called a turnkey property. There's 2 main approaches to this. The first is when you buy one, you pay a 10% deposit, which is held by a lawyer in a trust account. So at no time can you touch your deposit, and at no time can we touch the deposit until we deliver the home as per contract. You've inspected it, made sure you're happy with it, and we've fulfilled our obligations. And then once settlement occurs, we get access to that deposit. So at no point is your deposit at risk. The other thing about a turnkey property is, like Matthew and I said, as we invest in these properties ourselves, we go, what do we actually need to make this a good investment? When we bought that house in Rolleston, moved in, there were no curtains. We just assumed the house came with curtains. And we've done all these little things of adding value to our home. So it comes with blinds, it comes with the fridge, comes with the microwave, comes with the appliances, the washing machine, the dryer. So when you move into this home, or your tenant does, it's actually set up ready to go. There's nothing worse than spending your $50,000, $100,000 deposit and then having to go spend another $20,000 of cash getting the home ready for people to occupy.
We connect your power, we connect your internet, we put the TV antenna on the roof. We just do so many little things to make sure it's easy for you, because we are the client as well. So we love our customers, we really do, and we always want to do what's right by them and to look after them and help them. So now these things we do aren't available on all of our developments, and they're available on case-by-case basis. But essentially, these are the sort of things we've done for customers. We've given them assistance with their deposit, where we've let them pay it off over several months. We've given them assistance with, let's say it's an investor and they've bought a couple of properties, we might pay their first 2 years of rates and insurance. Let's say it's a first home buyer and they're struggling to make it work, we can furnish the whole house for them. So we have all these little things we can do to help you, because we really appreciate your business, and we don't want you to buy one house, we want you to buy 10 houses and have your sister buy 10 and your father buy 10. So we want to do what's right by you, so you walk out of this transaction going, oh my God, that was absolutely amazing. I'm going to recommend these guys to everyone, and Williams Corporation.
And also everyone's situation is different, and it's quite cool sort of helping people through the process of, it could be, we'll pay for you to go see a financial advisor, so you actually have the information to know if you can or can't buy a house.
And get a proper cash flow done.
You're moving out of your parents' home, you don't want to have to write a check for $15,000 for furniture. We'll help you provide that furniture so it's on the mortgage. It's not a cash payment from you when you move in.
Yeah, we do lots of things just to make it a really, really great process. So thank you very much for watching this. Obviously, we want to sell you a home and an investment property and your friends and family, but we also just appreciate you following us, being part of our community, being part of Williams Corporation. We have some great information on our website, which is free to download. We also have a really eager team that loves to work with you on a case-by-case basis. So if you're interested in purchasing a property, simply message us. We'll partner you with a property consultant, and they'll help you walk you through this process. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.
And if anything else, hopefully you guys have just learned some information, learn a bit of economic data, and it's just got your brain ticking of either, am I doing the right thing with my current investments, or I want to get into it, I want to find out more. But hopefully we've added value to your day, and thanks so much for attending.